So my name is Justin, and if we've never met before, I'm going to talk for a while and then give you a chance to say what you have to say if you do, or ask questions if you'd like. And there's really nothing required of you. In fact, you have a unique circumstance in this type of meetings, which may be an asset or may be a liability of a button you can push and get rid of me completely. We'll have to see if that's an asset or a liability. But I do want to start by telling you a little story, a story that I've told before, but I think is relevant in this particular case. Uh, and you may find it's an advantageous story for you to listen to in terms of how to take in input in an environment of this kind, meaning watching somebody on a computer screen, hopefully not on a telephone, because on a telephone I would be very little and you would be very big. And this experiment involves something different than that. So some years ago, I was, as a young man, I was restless and curious. Now mostly I'm curious, but at that time I was restless and curious, and I traveled a lot, and I liked going to exotic places. One of the exotic places I knew someone, a friend, who invited me there was Afghanistan. So I traveled to Afghanistan, and I traveled at that time before the Shah was deposed and the Ayatollahs took over. I traveled through Iran to get to Afghanistan. And I was in Tehran and then took a bus to a city in the northeast, big city in the northeast, which was the last big city on before the border of Afghanistan and Iran, and I had to stop there to get a permit for entering Afghanistan at this time. So I took a bus. It was maybe a 20-hour bus. It was a long bus ride to Mashhad, which was the city near the border. And I stayed there for a while. I had to stay there, as it turned out, for a few days to get this permission. And in Mashhad, as in other Islamic countries, there are big mosques and big courtyards. And this particular mosque, by the name of Imam Reza Mosque, I think it was called, was a huge courtyard, probably fit 500,000 people. So I was walking around the courtyard, and there was a big pool of water there, and looking at the pool and walking around, enjoying myself, and very picturesque, a lot of tile work and very pretty. And as if anybody who's been in a Islamic country knows that 5 times a day the call to prayer happens, and in this city, of course, it was likewise. So the call to prayer happened, and my history with organized religion and its rituals was relatively disrespectful and disinterested. I had some spiritual interest, but certainly not uh, uh, aligning with the major religions of that time or this time. So I was not disrespectful about the point, but I was certainly not interested in praying 5 times a day. But I was okay to observe praying 5 times a day happening. So I heard the prayer, and my plan was to, uh, as people gathered to pray, I thought mostly in the mosque inside, I would move to the outside and observe and watch and see if it was interesting or not, because I was curious. But within, I'd say, 3 minutes, there were people in the plaza, and maybe even 300,000 people, but more people that you can conceive of, being in one place, and I was right in the middle. So my circumstances were that I was standing amidst a few 100,000 people right in the middle with no aisles and no possible way of escape. But my thought was, well, this will be okay. I know these prayers don't go on for that long. We'll just stand here. But within 30 seconds, everyone was down and I was up. So you can picture me, as I described before, as the candle in the middle of a birthday cake, with everything else being on uh, prostrate and me standing up. Now, how long could a person possibly maintain that that position with whatever point of view or whatever aloofness or whatever pride or whatever opinions that person could have? And I was fairly modest with my feeling of separateness and superiority, somewhere in the mid-range. But it was, I had to go down. I had to. I didn't want to. I didn't feel comfortable doing it. It wasn't my personal choice, but I did it. I went down and I tried to simulate the actions of the people around me because everybody seemed to know exactly what they were doing and I didn't. And I did. I got down, I went on my knees on my bed, I stood up, sit down. I didn't know, I knew a few of the words, but as everybody else does, but I didn't know many. And it went on for about probably a little longer than it usually goes on because of the nature of the piety of the people in that part of the world in terms of Islam. And say 15 minutes. And the first 5 minutes were really difficult. The second 5 minutes were interesting. And the third 5 minutes I loved. And certainly not that I became a Muslim or I had any interest in Islam in particular, but the gesture was so alien, yet so attractive to me to just give it up. Give it up. Give up your separateness. Give up your ideas. Give up your opinions. Give up your resistance. Just give it up. What's the worst thing that could happen? And there was no worst thing that could happen there. And there is no worst thing that could happen here. You are completely protected by your electronic device. You have the asset of having a button in front of you that you can push and immediately escape. So you have, as I said, either an asset or liability, but it may be that this meeting, this talk that I give is interesting for you, but it may start off to be not that interesting to you. But I'm advising from my experience that you try to stick it out. Walk out, you can eat during while I'm talking, you could do really whatever you want. You could balance your checkbook while I'm talking. But I advise, try an experiment with me. Try that experiment that I didn't have the choice to try in the middle of all those people, but you have the choice to try, which is stick with one thing right now, just for a little while, and give it a chance, because you might find something that will open the door for you. It has happened for other people. Okay? Now I'm looking at all your little pictures. I title this talk as being connected to this extraordinarily unique circumstance that we're in the midst of experiencing. And really, whoever you are, wherever you're in the world, wherever you are in the world, because I know there are people in different world listen. We, in fact, as these Zoom conferences go or lectures go, we have a certain amount of people that we're allowed to have in this. And after that number of people, those people who don't get in, they get a sign saying, sorry, the meeting is closed. And not so much because we wanted to have it closed, but after 1,000 people, then the rest of the people can't get in, but they will get to listen to it on probably in the next few days from YouTube or however that happens. That will make that available to whoever didn't get in. So I said I would talk about the the effect and the nature of the coronavirus on our current life, whether it's spiritual or practical, or how it tied in and my perspective of it. And I will touch on that a little, but really, we're human beings, and we're, even though our circumstances are unique, we are experiencing something that human beings can experience. So I don't want to make it like this is, that this talk is all about that, because I'm sure we've talked and talked and talked about that amongst ourselves and each other and whoever we've crossed paths with, whether it be electronically or personally. Uh, but remember, I'm seeing you, so keep your hands away from your face. You hear that? I'll know if you did. Okay, I'm getting an acceptance. Except for the rebels who are putting their hands to their face. You wouldn't have done very well in Mashhad. So before I talk about anything related to this, this virus situation, I want to make it very clear that I have a perspective that includes something that you might call impersonal. I do also have a perspective that includes something very personal. I'm very aware of the pain that people are feeling, the danger that people are feeling, the fear that people are feeling, the anxiety that people are feeling, and the tragedy, certainly, of people who know people that are either very ill or even dying. That pain is not something that I in any way want to rise above or make less, and in rising above, make less of. I feel that pain for the people who are going through that, and I am sensitive to that, and I don't want to say anything, even if I make jokes, because I do make jokes. I'm not belittling in any way or making less of the difficulty of the pain that human beings around this earth are feeling now. Not necessarily many of us who are, the pain we're feeling is that we're worrying about our toilet paper, or we're not getting the particular kind of yogurt that we ordinarily get, or whatever restrictions that we've worked so hard not to have. I don't mean those people, and I don't mean that pain, but there is real pain being felt. And I want you to be very clear that I am not immune to that pain or be unaware of that pain, nor would I want to be. That is one of the things that tie us together, the joy we feel and the pain we feel. And I have not used either this position that I'm in today or the state of being that I have to avoid feeling those feelings. I do feel those feelings. So we're in this together. I remember, as unique as these circumstances are, and they certainly are unique, I do remember the world impact of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, and the impact that that has had on the world, especially people who travel and fly all over the world, not just people from New York, and not just people who are from the citizens of the US or traveling to or from the US, but now people all over the world are dealing with 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 the lines of getting in and out of airports, and taking their shoes off, and whatever you have to do, and that syndrome that uh, took place and still takes place, and recognizing that really what happened in the aftermath was we as a culture worked as hard as we possibly could to reestablish what we had before. So we instituted so that we could fly at leisure, so that we could enjoy flying, so the flying businesses would continue, so that everybody employed and involved in the airline business would continue, so people would continue to have their vacations, so all these things would happen. We worked really hard as a culture, and around the world worked really hard as a culture to invent machines, to hire people, to develop agencies, and that would make it possible so that we could reestablish what was before. We worked really hard to reestablish what was before, so that we can almost forget about what happened before and go on with our traveling and go on with our leisure and go on in that way. And then in 2008, there was a financial event that happened, which was unique as well, relatively unique as well. And people, not only in this country where it was instigated, corruptly instigated, but everyone around the world who experienced the financial impact of that, not only wealthy people, but people lost their homes because of that. People lost their jobs because of that around the world. Tremendous impact, tremendous sadness and difficulty in that. And we worked as a culture, and around the world, cultures worked very hard, societies worked very hard to reestablish the status quo that had been before, reestablish the businesses that had gone bankrupt, reestablished the possibility of buying a house and getting a mortgage, reestablished the Dow Jones Industrial Average from what it had gone to in this financial disaster took a few years, but we worked really hard to establish that. That was our remedy, get back to what was, without ever questioning, was the best that there is? Was the best that could be? No, we didn't question that. All we wanted to do was regain control. Regain control. All we wanted to do was reestablish the control that we had before. Can we fly? Can we travel without fear of violence? We wanted to establish the control we had before. And from the financial crisis, we want to reestablish the value of currency, reestablish the value of investments, reestablish the value of home ownership, reestablish the value of employment. Not that that was the greatest thing of all times, but it was the most control that we ever had, and we wanted to reestablish that control. Even though it was possible, and we didn't acknowledge or recognize that it was possible, as that person standing in the middle of that couple of 100,000 crowd in Mashhad in Iran, who had no control whatsoever the next moments of his life, and ended up having an experience through that out of control feeling that that person treasures to this day. So our romance, control, never got questioned during that 9/11 terrorist tragedy and all the Syrian wars and everything that happened in and around that, or the Iraq war that happened in and around that. No questioning of its tremendous effects. And the same in 2008. No questioning of the illusion and control, and people asking, well, what is the real value of control? Is it the ultimate human possibility? Is it the doorway to joy and peace? Never ask that question. And right now, we have another opportunity, an opportunity which is ubiquitous. It's touching wealthy people, it's touching poor people, it's touching male people, it's touching female people, it's touching Black people, it's touching brown people, it's touching every coloration of people that there are. It's touching everyone. It's even touching young people, not because the world of older people. And they're being restricted from their lives, even though they might very well. If it were Lord of the Flies, they might go out and go to bars and do whatever they do, but they're restricted even from doing that. So this particular event, this pandemic, not only involves everyone because of the potential of disease, but involves everyone potentially re-examining this question of control and its value. Health is an interesting uh, common denominator. We all depend on it. There's nobody who doesn't depend on health. Every human being depends on health. What an incredible common denominator we have. And we deal with it in different ways. In the more affluent parts of the world, we deal with health so that we can have more health. And we have systems for getting us more health. And if we don't feel enough health, we do something to get even more health. And if that doesn't work, we get a massage so that we feel good. We're always looking to feel better in the affluent part of the world, but we never, ever ask ourselves the question, what are we going to do with all this health that we have? Right now, there's a lot of focus on health. I think it's a gift of a time to ask that question. Well, certainly no one wants to get this virus. And certainly no one wants to get this virus seriously. And more certainly, no one wants to die of this virus or be incapacitated by this virus. And that's understandable. And that's recognizably reasonable. But is that the standard of health that we generally bring? Are we always in potential crisis? We're not. Our situation is that we don't really think about the purpose of human life, the purpose of healthy human life. Could it be that good health means a good time so that we can do whatever we want, so that we can control our circumstance? Is that the divine plan, if there even is one? But now in this unique time when control and health are linked together, what a fascinating time for us to ask deeper questions, more meaningful questions about our life. Like, is control the epitome of the human condition? Certainly it was at a time when people 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, maybe even a couple of hundred years ago, were vulnerable to everything, vulnerable to violence of every kind, whether it be nature, whether it be opposing tribes, whether it be disease, whatever it was. People felt themselves as victims of this huge something. And certainly understandable, their quest for getting some level of control. But is there a point at which that seeking for control, that quest for control, reaches its apex, its maximum? Any further seeking for control becomes retrograde, becomes self-destructive, becomes even harmful to the human feeling. The levels of insurance and insurance on insurance and hedging the insurance on insurance may be going too far, because those of us have quested for having so much control. What we find then is that we have to protect the control we have. If our control is in our finances, if our control is in our health, if our control is in the manipulation of the people around us to eliminate some people and include others, all those levels of control. If we have controlled, closed ourselves all by ourselves, so we can make the coffee just like how the fuck we want to. Nobody's making it for us. I like my coffee the way I like my coffee, and everything else as well. We limit it down to, if I live alone, I can go out when I want and be around people, but I live alone. But now you can't go out. What have you set up for yourself? You have all the control. You can make your coffee just like you want to. But how about people that haven't had that control? People are around other people. They can make agreements with those other people of how they're going to maintain their their well-being during this crisis. Make an agreement. We're not going to go out. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But people are together. People can find themselves together. The people in big families in poor places that don't have the flexibility for that level of control to say, I want to live alone because I can make my own coffee. If I put something down on the table, it's going to be there tomorrow. That's what I'm dedicated to doing. If I want to leave the dish in the sink, I leave it in the sink. If I don't want, I don't want to. Nobody else is leaving dishes in my sink. And now you're alone. Congratulations, you're successful. Your friends are on the electronic. And I'm not accusing, I'm saying this is anomalous. This is interesting. This is another side of control, another side of the affluent, the dream of the affluent world, to be able to predict how things will go, to never be surprised, to know the options and the alternatives of what will happen. And as Leonard Cohen said, control begins with your family and soon comes round to your soul. Those of you who seek, how does it go? You who would leave everything that you cannot control. It begins with your family and soon comes around to your soul. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because we all have to acknowledge and admit to each other the level of control that we've sought. It is not a difficult thing to acknowledge. We've held it very high up on our pedestal, but even if we haven't held it high up on our pedestal, we have held it on our pedestal. That control is very important. Who you know, who you don't know, what people think about you, your image, what people don't know about you, what people do know about you, how you present yourself, what you look like, what you know and what you don't know. To control that image, powerful amounts of energy. Avoid being embarrassed. Avoid being discovered as being something other than what you're presenting. That's a very high level of control. And soon comes round to your soul. Now, you're not thinking that was your plan, that in seeking this level of control, whether it be of external circumstances, meaning your possessions and what you can do on the outside, or control of your image. You certainly didn't plan on disconnecting yourself from the energy that keeps you alive, from your connection to whatever you consider the bigness of this creation to be, whether it's a God or whether it's energy or whatever it is, it's bigger than you are. It's energizing your breath at this moment to even listen to this program. You will never get control over it. And you know that. No matter how you try, no matter how much you ride the elliptical, no matter how much you jog or how much kale you eat, be in control of that energy that maintains your life. It's giving you life so that you can do those things. And if you knew that you were jeopardizing that relationship, certainly you would question your quest for control in external things if it begins with your family and soon comes round to your soul. But certainly, anyone who has attempted a spiritual discipline, tried to learn to meditate, upon closer scrutiny would see that desire to control that meditation, to control that spiritual discipline, to use it as a tool to enhance your experience, to improve your lot, rather than to understand that any method or any meditation that you learn is a gift from that energy that keeps you alive to walk back the path and you reunite with that energy, to rediscover that energy, to rediscover the connection that you had that's been lost, and feel the humility and the passivity of being under that meditation, not over that meditation, not my meditation, but you're its person. Meditation, you, not you, meditation. But how could we possibly have that attitude if everything else is sought as a product of our control? We meet someone, we want them to like us. We try to do what we can. We try to control the circumstances. We try to control when how comfortable we can be. And then we try to over-control it and over-control it. How would it be possible that all of a sudden we become party to a spiritual pursuit, or want to in any way become party to a spiritual pursuit, and not bring that along with us? Everything in us that we've learned, everything in us that has become habitual to us, we bring along with that. We bring our opinions, we bring our unexamined concepts, we bring our habits, we bring them there. And our habituation to control is so deep and so thorough and so learned from such a young age that how could we possibly leave it behind? Unless we were prepared to really examine this habituation that we have, how could we possibly not bring it forth into something that it had no place in whatsoever? The spiritual pursuit descends from finer to coarser. It is finer, we are coarser. Got that? It is finer, we are coarser. Now, fineness certainly exists within inside of us. It certainly is there. It's also certainly obscured. It's certainly obstructed by our fear and our anxiety and our competition and our embarrassment and our jealousy and our impatience. Certainly obscured by all those things, but it's there. But it's like a cloudy day with the sun, you wouldn't say it's a sunny day. There's just some clouds here. It's a cloudy day. We're cloudy days as human beings. The sun is there. It's within inside us, but it's obscured by all these things that I mentioned and that you're, I'm sure, aware of. And unless we're prepared to explore those obstacles, explore those obstructions, leave some of them and maybe even all of them aside, if it comes to pass that we don't need them anymore, how could it be possible for us to embark at a connection with the energy that keeps us alive, the energy within inside us, which is never gone anywhere. It's acting right now, despite the clouds, despite your resistance, despite your fear, despite your anxiety, despite your restlessness. But your connection with it has been lost, but can be rediscovered, but not in a direct way where you're going to then attack it. Because it's coming, it's raining down on you. You can catch the water in a basin, but you can't make it rain harder. You can't pull it down. You can only be open to it coming to you. And that is not the way, and is not the way we do meditation. That is not the way we open up. We don't recognize that our natural state is openness. We don't recognize that our natural state is compassion. We don't recognize that our natural state is giving. We don't recognize that our natural state is togetherness. We are one entity. We're proud of all kinds of things. But the one thing that we could be proud of, we're not proud of: being a human being. Not being an American human being or a white human being or an Indian human being or a tall human being or a brilliant human being, but being a human being. That's it. That's our common denominator, and that is our, by far, our greatest accomplishment. We will never surpass that accomplishment. Never will we surpass that accomplishment. It is the incredible gift that we've been given. But that gift is obscured by our quest for controlling our externals, and returning to that state is obscured from us because we think we have to do something to get there rather than remove the obstacles that are in the way, because our natural state is everything beautiful. There are different kinds of people. There are brigands, there are tyrants, and there are social workers, good people, whatever the title for those people are. But everyone is doing what they're doing to be okay. Now, certainly we would prefer to have a world of good doing people and not tyrants. But even the good people are doing what they're doing to be okay because they're not feeling okay. They're not feeling the simple gift of human life. So they have to do something to feel okay, just as the corrupt people have to do something to feel okay. But we are beautiful within inside of us. I am an authority on this subject. I have had contact with so many people, good doing people and corrupt people, over so many years, and I have never failed to see within inside, deep beneath, the compassion, the goodness, the well-meaningness, the quest for harmony within a person. It's there within inside all of us, as is the light and the sound within inside of us. But we will not regain that state. We will not rediscover that state in the form of a quest. We can only regain that state in the form of surrender. Surrender, as I had to do in that situation in Mashhad in Iran, on the border of Afghanistan. Standing in an audience of a couple of 100,000 people, resisting, and then having to surrender to a completely harmless and innocent situation. Starting with the attitude is, I'm not going to do that. I don't believe that. I believe otherwise. Yes, I defend their right to do that. I respect their right to do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bow down to anything. Americans don't bow down. And I was tricked by circumstance into having that experience. And had I not had that experience, had I not been tricked into that experience, probably when it came to pass that I had to learn to see light and in that on that inner sound, which has no interest in my life externally whatsoever. It's the energy that maintains it. It's not guiding me. It's keeping me alive. Everything else is something that happens, but it exists on such a finer level than the doings of my life that to sink down and to reach that, I had to give up some of those obstacles, some of those opinions, some of those musts, some of those insistences, some of those determinations, so much of that anxiety and restlessness and jealousy and annoyance and judgment, embarrassment. Letting that go, but not letting it go, but learning its existence so as to be able to let it go. Because no one lets go anything that works for them, unless they see its self-destructive component. No matter what you take along with you, you will continue to take it along with you unless you assess this is not worthwhile anymore. And then you'll still probably put it in a box and put it on your shelf in case maybe later you can use it. Anytime you look at your shelves, your storage, you'll see all those things. Oh, I haven't looked at that for a long time, but who knows? I live on the equator. It's 90 degrees all the time. Never know when there's going to be a cold spell. But at least you can put them aside temporarily, some of those things, if you really know that they're there and they're hindering you from this moment. But how can you know that they're hindering you for this moment? Because they've always worked for you to get the not all too unpleasant Sunday afternoon that you consider a beautiful life or an adequate life. How can you possibly put them aside if they've worked for you in that way? You can't. So the preliminary study has to be seeing yourself as you are, seeing what operates you, and being to assess for yourself, not having other people assess for you. Assess for yourself. Is this an asset? Is this a liability? Not somebody telling you, I don't like this about you, but you seeing yourself as you are, seeing your competition and your anxiety and saying, this is not appropriate. This is not an asset. This is a liability. This worrying, this looping about things, this thinking about things nonstop till they come out the way something in me wants them to come out, is not an asset anymore. So we wouldn't defend that quality anymore. If somebody said, called our attention to it, we wouldn't say, well, that's not so bad. You know, everybody does it. It's not so bad. I wasn't really even doing that anymore. Because you would notice, would have the opportunity to notice for yourself that, hey, I am subject to some self-destructive practices, and this might be one of them. That is the part of the endeavor I've been involved with for years that people have the most resistance. People like the idea, oh, I'd like to learn how to meditate. But then when they sit and try, they find they talk to themselves almost nonstop. And finally, after talking to themselves nonstop, they get so exhausted that they fall asleep. That's not meditation. That's trying to meditate before you're a candidate for meditation. Someone who's gotten to some level of leaving enough of the coarseness behind that you can connect with that finer vibration. Otherwise, you're using this divine tool called meditation as what was it called? A relaxation response. It is not the highest and best use of that. You know, that term is from real estate. Like you buy an acre of land on Fifth Avenue and Broadway in New York, and you put up a parking lot there rather than a skyscraper. It's not the highest and best use of that land. Meditation, its possibilities are extraordinary. They can lead you back. It can lead you back. You can't lead it back, but it can lead you back to the energy that maintains your life, to that light and sound that keeps it all going. It can lead you back there. If you use it as a relaxation response, you probably wouldn't use it in that way. If you do carpentry or you do plumbing or you do electric work and you have one of those tools that are finer, you have a belt sander. Now, a belt sander is a pretty heavy thing, but if you use it as a hammer, you will not, again, use it as a belt sander. It won't work as a belt sander. Meditation used as a relaxation device will not be available to you. It will not be available to you as what its possibility is. So the affliction of control causes us to try to keep everything together as it was, maintain everything as it was, and add meditation onto it. Well, this affliction of control and meditation are diametrically opposed. It does not work. You cannot do it. You may be able to use it as a relaxation tool, but better use something innocuous that doesn't have some future great possibility as a relaxation tool. Turn on some music and listen to the water flow. That can help relax you. But meditation is a divine something which descends from a finer place to lift you back up there inside yourself. And your affliction of control, which begins with your family and soon comes round to your soul, which you are really right now in the midst of this strange and unique situation, desperately trying to figure out how you're going to get everything you possibly ever ate still. I'll send a drone over Trader Joe's to send that drone into the shelves. I won't have any exposure whatsoever, but I'll withdraw what I usually get in Trader Joe's. And if you do come up with that brilliant idea, the world will latch onto it and you'll be rich and famous. And if that's what you want, keep thinking. So I know I haven't said much about the incredibly unique situation that we find ourselves in. I have no comparison for it. And certainly I'm probably older than a lot of you who are listening, and I have no frame of reference for what's happening now. How it will come out afterwards, will we transition into a new type of society? Will we not? Fascinating questions to ask. Right now, we're mostly in the midst of trying to escape the worst of it, and that's understandable. But there are also these very interesting questions that if you feel like talking about that subject, maybe put some of the time into not necessarily how many people have it and how many people this and how many people that, and be it more a tool of the media trying to get you to think about this all the time. So you'll turn on the news or look on the computer, how many today, how many today, how many today, rather than doing that. It's relevant to be informed, but it also might be relevant to look at what is the philosophical angle about this? What is happening in this world? What are the possibilities of where it could lead? Very interesting questions, while not losing the, not trend like there is not a catastrophe happening here for some people on this planet. Not the people who are not getting the particular brand of yogurt that they want, but the people who are suffering and afraid and have loved ones that are. So I would very much recommend, and I'm gonna, after I say another word or two, we're gonna take a little break and you'll have the chance to ask any questions and make any comments that you want. And when you make comments, I have the button, I can shut you off in a minute, just like you could shut me off in a minute. What do you think of that? So, but I probably won't. But what I would recommend is these are unique times. You're probably working less, even if you can work from home. You probably have a lot of time that you didn't have before. See if you can make use of it. Maybe it would be a life-changing experience for you in a way you would like it to be a life-changing experience. This would be my advice to anybody. Read more, think more deeply about things, feel more deeply about things, listen to music, draw, look out your window, gaze, get to a deeper level than you usually get when you're going from one thing to another. Don't fill your life with tasks. Do the things that you have to do, but don't do the things you don't have to do. You have a possibility, most of you have a possibility of this retreat that you were planning that you couldn't quite get yourself to do. And whatever level of retreat you can find yourself participating in. You know, if you need a list of books to read, then I can give you a list of books to read. And then not all the books that I've written, they're books that fed me and feed me and feed the people I know, and songs and music and playing, going beneath the surface of things, which is where all the richness in life exists, not the richness that we've been presented with. We can win what's never been won. But as Dylan said, meanwhile, life goes on all around you and inside you and within inside you. So